fired for old ideas. My patent was worth $8 million. My hands were shaking as I packed the cardboard box. 15 years at InnovateTech Solutions. And it took exactly 8 minutes to end my career. 8 minutes in a conference room with the CEO, the head of HR, and a security guard standing by the door like I was a criminal. "Marcus, your position has been eliminated," the CEO said, not meeting my eyes. "Your proposals have become increasingly outdated. The market has moved beyond the solutions you are proposing. We need innovation. We need forward-thinking ideas. We are restructuring toward emerging technologies." I had proposed those solutions 2 weeks ago. The same solutions I had been developing for 3 years. The same solutions I had presented to the executive team with detailed technical specifications, performance metrics, and implementation timelines. What specifically was wrong with the proposal? I asked, my voice steady despite the anger boiling underneath. "They are too conventional," the CEO replied. "Your approach relies on legacy systems. We need something revolutionary." But they were not conventional. They were brilliant. I knew they were brilliant because I had tested them. I had run the numbers. I had proven they would solve the security vulnerabilities that had plagued our infrastructure for years. The problem was not that my ideas were outdated. The problem was that my boss, Victoria Chang, wanted to take credit for revolutionary ideas herself, and I refused to let her stamp her name on my work. 3 months ago, Victoria had started taking meetings with me where she would ask detailed questions about my research. I would explain my thinking, my methodology, my conclusions. Days later, she would present those same ideas to the board as her strategic vision. I had started saying nothing. I had started keeping my work private. So when I finally presented my ideas to the executive team directly, bypassing Victoria, she had felt threatened. "This is about cost optimization too," the CEO continued. "We are moving in a new direction. Your severance package includes 6 months of salary, health insurance through the end of the year, and outplacement services. Security will escort you out in 30 minutes. I looked at the box I was packing, my desk photos, my engineering books, my prototype models, the work of 15 years, reduced to what fit in a cardboard box. "Am I allowed to take my personal files?" I asked. "We will email you any personal files from your work computer," HR said carefully. "You cannot take any company materials." "My research files?" I asked. "The notebooks where I documented my work?" "Company property," the CEO replied flatly. "Everything you created while employed here belongs to InnovateTech." I felt the weight of that statement. Every idea, every innovation, every late night spent solving problems that had haunted our systems. All of it belonged to the company. All of it belonged to Victoria. But then I remembered something crucial, something that had been sitting in my apartment for the last 6 months. I had been filing patents. Every innovation I had created at InnovateTech, I had also filed personal patent applications, not based on company materials, based on my own research, my own thinking, my own methodology. I had done the work at night, on weekends, using my personal computer. I had documented everything meticulously. The patents showed my work. They showed my thinking. They showed that these ideas had originated in my mind, not from company resources. I finished packing the box. "I am ready," I said. As security walked me out of the building, I was not thinking about the job I had lost. I was not thinking about the salary that was being cut off. I was not thinking about Victoria's betrayal or the CEO's dismissal of my work. I was thinking about the US Patent Office. I was thinking about the 4 patent applications I had filed. I was thinking about how those applications documented the exact solutions I had proposed to InnovateTech. I was thinking about how, if those patents were approved, they would be worth a lot of money. And more importantly, they would prove that InnovateTech had stolen my ideas. The first thing I did after getting home was open my laptop and check the Patent Office website. The 4 applications I had filed were all in various stages of processing. The first one, filed 18 months ago, was marked under review. The others were further back in the queue, but they were officially in the system, officially dated, officially attributed to me as the inventor. I opened my personal filing cabinet and pulled out the documentation I had been keeping. Handwritten notebooks with dates and times, detailed sketches of system architecture, mathematical proofs showing why my approaches would work, timestamps showing when I had conceived each idea. Everything was documented. Everything proved that Marcus Sinclair had independently developed these solutions. What InnovateTech did not know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for this possibility. Not consciously, not with the intention of being fired, but intuitively, I had started protecting my intellectual property. I had started keeping copies of my work outside company systems. I had started filing patents. I hired a patent attorney the next morning. Her name was Diana Kim. She specialized in intellectual property disputes. When I told her my situation, about the job, the patents, the stolen work, she listened carefully. "Show me everything," she said. I spread out my documentation across her conference room table. Notebooks, sketches, patent filings, emails where I had proposed solutions to InnovateTech executives, technical specifications I had created. Diana reviewed everything for 30 minutes without speaking. "This is strong," she finally said. "Your personal documentation is dated and meticulous. Your patent filings predate your termination. You have clearly done this work independently." "Can InnovateTech claim they own the patents?" I asked. "They can try," Diana explained. "They will argue that you developed these technologies while employed by them, using mental processes developed through your work with them. But your patent filings show that you did this work independently, outside company systems, on your own time. The dates matter. The documentation matters." "What about getting them approved?" I asked. "The first one has been under review for 18 months. Patent approval can take years," Diana explained. "But once they are approved, they become very valuable. If these technologies are as innovative as you say, and if they solve real market problems, companies will pay to license them. Or they will try to design around them." Over the next 6 months, I began a new career. I was no longer an employee of InnovateTech. I was an independent inventor. I started documenting my work more rigorously. I created videos explaining my methodology. I wrote technical papers. I registered my copyright on all documentation. I filed additional patents for variations and extensions of my original ideas. And I waited. During those 6 months, I worked with Diana to prepare for what would inevitably come. InnovateTech would hear about the patents. They would realize I had independently protected my intellectual property. They would try to claim ownership. We prepared defensive documents. We gathered evidence of my independent work. We documented every piece of proof that showed Marcus Sinclair had developed this technology outside the company's systems. But I also did something else. I reached out to potential licensing partners. I contacted 3 major technology companies that I knew would be interested in my innovations. I sent them technical specifications. I explained that these patents would soon be approved. I offered them licensing opportunities. All 3 companies expressed interest. One company, System Secure Technologies, was particularly enthusiastic. They had been trying to solve the exact problems my patents addressed. They had invested millions in research and gotten nowhere. They saw my innovations as a potential game changer. "Once your patents are approved, we would like to negotiate an exclusive licensing agreement," their CTO told me. "If this works as you have described, we could build an entire product line around it." How much would that be worth? I asked carefully. Conservative estimate, $8 million annually in licensing revenue. If the technology performs as promised, potentially even more. $8 million annually. I had been earning $180,000 at InnovateTech. Now I was potentially looking at $8 million from a single licensing agreement. But it all depended on one thing: getting the patents approved. And then getting InnovateTech to accept that they did not own them. The email arrived on a Thursday morning. Patent application approved. The subject line read. I had to read it 3 times to make sure I was understanding correctly. The first patent, the one I had filed 18 months ago, had been approved. It was official. It was mine. Marcus Sinclair was the inventor of record. The patent number was US-10847956. The date of approval was clearly documented. Within 2 weeks, the remaining 3 patents were also approved. 4 patents, all in my name, all documenting the exact innovations I had proposed to InnovateTech before being fired for presenting outdated solutions. I called Diana immediately. "This is it," she said. "These approvals change everything. Now you have legal proof of ownership. Now InnovateTech has a problem." The problem was this. InnovateTech owned everything I had created while employed there, but they did not own what I could prove I had created independently, on my own time, outside their systems. The patents proved that I had done this work independently. The dates proved it. The documentation proved it. InnovateTech could try to claim the patents were derived from work I had done at their company, but they would have to prove that. They would have to prove I had stolen company trade secrets. They would have to prove I had violated my employment agreement, and they could not prove any of that because it was not true. Diana filed the paperwork to establish my rights to the patents. She sent notice to InnovateTech's legal team that I was now the owner of 4 patents covering technology that solved critical security vulnerabilities. The response from InnovateTech came within 3 days. Their legal team sent a cease and desist letter claiming that all the technologies covered by my patents were developed while I was employed at InnovateTech, using company resources, and therefore belonged to the company. They demanded that I surrender the patents or face legal action. Diana and I had prepared for this exact scenario. We sent a response that included my personal patent applications, filed independently. My personal documentation, dated and notarized. Proof that I had done this work outside company systems, on my own time. Emails showing that I had proposed these solutions at InnovateTech and been rejected. My employment agreement, which specifically excluded independent work done outside company time and systems. The legal battle that followed lasted 3 months, but ultimately it was clear. The patents belonged to me, monsieur. The documentation was too strong. The dates were too clear. I had followed every legal requirement to protect my intellectual property. More importantly, I had system-secure technologies on my side. They were extremely interested in these patents. They had hired their own legal team to verify my ownership. Once they confirmed I was the legitimate owner, they were ready to negotiate. The licensing agreement with System Secure was simple. I would grant them the exclusive right to use my 4 patents in their product development. In exchange, I would receive $8 million annually in licensing fees with a minimum 5-year commitment, $8 million per year, for letting them use technology I had invented. The contract was signed on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, the first payment, 1 month's worth, approximately $660,000, had been deposited into my account. I had been fired for proposing outdated solutions. I had been out of work for exactly 9 months. Now I was making 8 times what I had earned at InnovateTech, doing the exact same work I had been doing all along. The only difference was that now I owned it. InnovateTech's stock price dropped 23% in a single week. When news broke that Marcus Sinclair, the former engineer they had fired, owned patent-protected technology that was worth millions annually, the market reacted instantly. Investors realized that InnovateTech had lost access to critical innovations. They realized the company had mismanaged its talent. They realized the CEO had made a catastrophic decision. But that was not the worst part for InnovateTech. The worst part came when System Secure Technologies announced a major media partnership with me. I was invited to speak at the largest technology conference in North America. My topic: why companies lose their best innovations, the Marcus Sinclair story. 2,000 engineers, technologists, and business leaders attended my presentation. I showed the patents. I showed the documentation. I showed the emails where I had proposed these solutions to InnovateTech and been rejected as outdated. I showed the financial impact: $8 million in annual licensing revenue, all flowing to me instead of InnovateTech, because they had dismissed my work. I was careful not to name InnovateTech directly, but everyone in that room knew exactly who I was talking about. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Within hours, the presentation had gone viral on social media. Within days, it had been viewed by over 5 million people. Recruiters started calling me. Other companies started reaching out about licensing my patents. Venture capitalists wanted to invest in my work. But the most significant call came from InnovateTech's new CEO. Victoria Chang had been removed from her position. The board of directors had realized that her mismanagement of talent and intellectual property had created a disaster. They had brought in a new CEO specifically to manage the crisis. "Marcus, this is Robert Sterling, CEO of InnovateTech," the voice said when I picked up the phone. "I want to apologize for what happened to you. I want to try to make this right." I listened carefully as he outlined an offer. InnovateTech wanted to license my patents. They wanted to purchase the rights to use my technologies in their own product development. They wanted to move beyond the legal dispute and find a partnership. "What are you offering?" I asked. "We are prepared to pay $50 million for a non-exclusive license to all 4 patents," he said, "plus ongoing royalties if we develop commercial products using your technologies. $50 million, plus royalties, on top of the $8 million I was already receiving annually from System Secure." I told him I would think about it. Diana reviewed the offer that evening. "This is excellent," she said. "They are essentially admitting that your patents are valuable and that you own them. They are paying a premium price because they are desperate to access the technology. You have all the power in this negotiation. What do you recommend?" I asked. "I recommend you accept," Diana said, "but negotiate for more. Push them to $60 million. Push them for higher royalties if they commercialize. Make them pay for what they took from you." The negotiation lasted 2 weeks. By the end, InnovateTech had agreed to $60 million up front for a non-exclusive license. 5% royalties on any products developed using the patents. Public recognition of me as the inventor. A formal apology from the CEO. I also negotiated one additional term. A consulting contract where InnovateTech would pay me $200,000 annually to advise on technology strategy. It was important to me that they did not just pay money and move on. It was important that they had to work with me, that they had to listen to my ideas, that they had to respect my expertise. The press release went out on a Friday afternoon. InnovateTech licenses innovative patent portfolio from Marcus Sinclair, the headline read. The story was picked up by every major technology publication: Forbes, TechCrunch, Wired, CNBC. The narrative was clear. A company had fired its best engineer for presenting outdated solutions. That engineer had filed patents independently. Those patents had proven to be worth millions. Now the company was paying tens of millions to license the technology they had rejected. It was the perfect story about how dismissing talent creates disaster. 6 months after the InnovateTech licensing deal, I had transformed my life completely. My income was now approaching $40 million annually. When you combined the system-secure licensing fees, the InnovateTech upfront payment amortized, the royalties, and the consulting contract. But more importantly, I had become the leading voice in technology innovation and intellectual property protection. I had written articles for Harvard Business Review about how companies destroy value by dismissing employee innovations. I had been interviewed on CNBC about workplace dynamics and innovation. I had been invited to speak at technology conferences globally. But the most significant opportunity came from a venture capital firm that wanted to fund my own company. They believed my patents were just the beginning. They believed I could create an entire technology platform around these innovations. They wanted to invest $50 million to build my company. "We will call it Sinclair Tech," the founder said. "Your name becomes the brand. You become the CEO. You have complete control over the company's direction." InnovateTech had taken 15 years of my work. They had dismissed my innovations. But now I had the power to build something different. This new company would protect intellectual property. This company would recognize employees as the most valuable asset. This company would be everything InnovateTech was not. I said yes to the venture capitalists immediately. Sinclair Tech was incorporated within 6 weeks. I hired brilliant engineers who had been dismissed or overlooked at larger companies. I hired innovators who deserved recognition but had not received it. I created a culture where ownership of intellectual property was shared between the company and the employees who created it. The company grew rapidly. We developed products based on my patents. We expanded into new technology areas. We became one of the most innovative companies in the industry. And I made sure that every employee who contributed received proper recognition and compensation. This was the opposite of how InnovateTech had operated. Within 2 years, Sinclair Tech was valued at $500 million. Within 4 years, we went public. The IPO valued the company at $2 billion. My personal stake in the company made me worth over $1 billion. But the financial success was less important than something else I had accomplished. I had created a company where the best people wanted to work, where innovation was valued, where people could not be dismissed for proposing solutions that did not fit someone else's agenda. InnovateTech, meanwhile, continued to struggle. Victoria Chang was never rehired anywhere senior. The CEO who had fired me was quietly removed after a year. The company eventually went through multiple restructurings and was eventually acquired by a larger competitor at a massive discount to its previous valuation. They had destroyed value by dismissing innovation. I had created value by protecting and expanding it. The irony was not lost on me. The company that had fired me for outdated solutions was now obsolete. And the company I built on those outdated solutions was one of the most valuable technology companies in the world. This story is completely fictional. All characters, companies, and events are made up for entertainment purposes. But the lessons are real. The first lesson is about intellectual property protection. If you develop innovations at your job, document your work. Keep records outside company systems. Understand your legal rights. Protect yourself. The second lesson is about recognizing talent. If you are in a leadership position, listen to good ideas, even if they do not fit your preconceived notions. The best innovation often comes from unexpected places. If you dismiss someone's work simply because it does not align with your vision, you might be dismissing millions of dollars in value. The third lesson is about power dynamics. In the Marcus Sinclair story, he had no power as an employee. His ideas were stolen. His work was dismissed. But the moment he protected his intellectual property through patents, the power dynamics shifted. Suddenly, InnovateTech needed him. Suddenly, they had to respect his work. This is why documentation matters. This is why proof matters. This is why protecting your work matters. The fourth lesson is about building something better. After being treated poorly at InnovateTech, Marcus could have sought revenge. Instead, he built a better company. He created a culture where the mistakes that had been made to him would never happen to anyone else. That is the real victory. In the corporate world, there are countless stories like this. People who were fired or overlooked. People whose work was stolen or dismissed. People who fought back with evidence and documentation and strategic thinking. Some of them became millionaires. Some of them became billionaires. All of them realized that the best response to injustice is not retaliation. It is excellence. The best response to dismissal is not anger. It is proving that your ideas were right all along. This is the story of how Marcus Sinclair was fired for proposing solutions that changed everything. But it is also a story about any of us who have faced professional betrayal or dismissal. You have more power than you think. You have more options than you realize. You have the ability to protect your work, prove your value, and build something extraordinary. The key is documentation. The key is strategic thinking. The key is not giving up when someone tells you that you are wrong. Thank you for watching this story. If you found value in this narrative about corporate dynamics, innovation, and intellectual property, I want you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel. We tell stories about workplace challenges, corporate drama, and how ordinary people navigate extraordinary situations. New episodes release every Monday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, hit that like button. It helps us reach more viewers who need to hear these stories about standing up for themselves and protecting their work. Third, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? What city are you in? How old are you? Have you ever had your work taken or your ideas dismissed at your job? What was your biggest takeaway from Marcus's story? I read every comment, and I genuinely want to hear from you. Your stories matter. Your experiences matter. And if you have faced workplace injustice, I want you to know that you have more power than you think.